Good afternoon and welcome to Open Mic.
And this is what his lovely said. Now take your finger off it, and don't you dare to touch it, 'cause it don't belong to you. Though you still crave it, your mom is gonna save it for the one whose love is true. Now there's a dozen others want it just as bad. The jeweler says it's precious, but it can't be had. So take your finger off it, and don't you dare to touch it, 'cause it don't belong to you. I mean it, 'cause it don't belong to you. Take your finger off it, and don't you dare to touch it, 'cause it don't belong to you. Though you still crave it, your mom is gonna save it for the one whose love is true. Now you can't find nothing like it, try and you'll fail. No, Papa, you can't buy it, it ain't for sale. So take your finger off it, and don't you dare to touch it, 'cause it don't belong to you. I mean it, 'cause it don't belong to you.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Open Mic. I'm pleased to have on the phone with me Miss Lori Urso from Ursula George. Lori, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much, Tom.
All right, so we just heard one of the tracks off your new CD, which is entitled One Steady Roll. The track we heard was entitled Take Your Finger Off of It. Can you tell us a little bit about this song?
Yeah, Take Your Finger Off It is one of the early, what we call hokum tunes, which really means overtly sexual, I guess you could say. It predates even the Tampa Red stuff, and it was written by Ambrose Bryan and recorded originally around 1921 by vaudeville singer Mary Stafford, who was known for her projecting voice, among other things. And that track just has a beautiful double entendre to it, as you heard. And I think you can pretty much figure it out when you listen to it,
Sure.
exactly what's going on there.
Fabulous. Well, tell me a little bit about this band you joined up with. You got some heavy hitters, some fabulous musicians that you joined with. And you yourself are doing the vocals, of course, and you also play guitar. So tell us a little bit about the band, how you got these guys together.
Yeah, well, I started Ursula George in 2000, actually, and at that time it was more of a more of a down-home sound, but it was focusing on the music of female vaudevillians, very much myself inspired by Sippy Wallace, born Beulah Thomas, of course, the Texas Nightingale. And over the years, the band has really evolved to be more of a true vaudeville jazz band. And really, that's in the blues vein, but it's the early jazz. It's where traditional blues started to evolve into what became, more schooled jazz. And it was music performed, really composed by African Americans and performed for black audiences in, segregated theaters. So we've developed that sound and that music really to give us a platform to tell the story of music of that era. And, bringing some of the other musicians into it really started when I married Marty Richards, the drummer, who's a very well-known jazz and blues drummer. And we just built it together over the last 4 or 5 years, really.
Fabulous. Now, tell us a little bit about the music, especially this latest CD that you're doing. You talked about the vaudeville era, and that pretty much comes around 1900 to 1930. Is that correct?
Yeah, the music, it's to tell the story of the music, you really have to tell the story of segregation and segregated theater. And, in the late 1800s, there was a Supreme Court case, Plessy versus Ferguson, that led to the separate but equal clause. And at that time, particularly in the South, communities began to segregate African Americans. And often in each town, there was a central district or street in which the segregated neighborhoods grew up. And at the center of those was often a theater. And live, the tent show circuit really, I guess, was the start of that type of theater. And there was obviously a market for performance halls and music that catered to African Americans. And so this really was the venue in which the young jazz composers really cut their teeth. And, of course, even though it was a hard life for those performers, no sugarcoating about it, still it was a way toward stardom for many young women at that time. So often you hear the stories of women lying about their ages so they could join theater troupes and tent shows, and that was their hope of getting a better life for themselves. But the music was, the art form of jazz in general really is a cultural gift born out of oppression, and as was blues, and so this is no exception. And this music in particular tended to have that double entendre to it, where it was, very sexually themed, but presented in a way that was acceptable publicly. So you get some really beautiful lyrics, and of course, with the schooled composers coming up, you also get some sophisticated progression. So it made for a lovely art form that unfortunately was short-lived for a number of reasons.
Yeah, you get both that raw and refined energy and artistmanship in this type of music, like you were saying. As I was listening to your CD earlier, that was one of the things that came up, is how, you hear certain kinds of music and they can be older or newer. But I was thinking on the lines of how so much music, the sound that is like this vaudeville music that we're talking about here and that you guys are playing, how it is so much defined by the cultural, the socioeconomic terms of that era, and what was going on. And a lot of music that you can listen to, if you really get into it, it tells a story, just beyond the music itself. So
absolutely.
I think that's cool that that you guys are performing this music and definitely keeping it alive,
Yeah, and when we do perform it, I make a point of really interpreting and talking about the history of the composers and the performers. And I've done a lot of my own exploration to learn about those people. And we can get into it a little bit, but this year I had a fellowship from the Rhode Island Foundation here in Rhode Island, which enabled me to travel and document African American theaters on the American landscape. So I traveled through 22 states by car and documented about 220 or so sites of either standing restored theaters, repurposed former theaters, or unfortunately, which is mostly the case, no longer existing theaters on vacant lots. So get a really interesting view of this particular aspect of the culture doing that.
Sure, a very deep, rich history, to be sure.
Mm.
Let's go ahead and take a listen to another track off the CD. The one we're going to hear is entitled My Man Rocks Me. A couple words on this song, please.
Yeah, this is a wonderful history here. My Man Rocks Me was written by J. Bernie Barber in 1922, and it's really considered one of the first rock and roll songs. If you listen to the song and you think about Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley, you can hear the original structure that really informed the song that Bill Haley did, because it's the first song, number one, that used the words rock and roll together in the vernacular.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But also, as the structure of the song is a countdown clock. When she's saying, I looked at the clock and the clock struck 1, the clock struck 3. So it really is influential in rock and roll that came, several decades later.
Absolutely. Well, this is My Man Rocks Me, and I'm speaking with Miss Lori Urso from the band Ursula George, and we're playing songs off their latest CD entitled One Steady Roll here on KGPR, Great Falls.
When he once takes hold, I looked at the clock and the clock struck 1. I said, Daddy, ain't we got fun? He kept rocking with one steady roll. I said, my man rocks me with one steady roll. There's no slipping when he once takes hold. I looked at the clock and the clock struck 3. I said, Daddy, you're killing me. He kept rocking with one steady roll. There's no slipping when he once takes hold. I looked at the clock and the clock struck 6. I said, Daddy, you're full of tricks. He kept rocking with one steady roll. I said, my man rocks me with one steady roll. And now there's no slipping when he once takes hold. I looked at the clock and the clock struck 10. I said, glory, amen. He kept rocking with one steady roll. With one steady roll. With one steady roll.
And we're back. Lori, I wanted to ask you, did you grow up in a musical household, or was music that something came a little bit later in your life?
Actually, I didn't. It was something that just came to me naturally as a child. Neither of my parents were musicians, and and not even with a deep appreciation of music. I mean, listen to music, but not as deeply interested as I have always been. And the story of I got my first guitar when I was 7 years old. I wanted to learn to play, and I had to get a guitar to do that. So I went door to door selling Christmas cards from a catalog because I knew one of the prizes you could win if you sold enough Christmas cards was this acoustic guitar. So that's actually how I got my first guitar, and then from there, convinced my parents to get me started on guitar lessons. So it was really all my own thing, and I can't remember what exactly when I heard my first blues song. I didn't, of course, know what blues at that time was, but the song was Bell Bottom Blues by Eric Clapton. And all I knew was just the progression of that song just struck me so deeply. And, that was really my introduction to the blues progression. And then over time, I discovered probably first Bonnie Raitt, and then from Bonnie Raitt, who was doing the music of some of the old vaudeville singers, really was able to get more into that history. So that's the start of the evolution, anyway.
Sure. What about your voice? Did you take vocal lessons as a child, or when you're emulating some of these older sounds that some of these women had with these bright, beautiful, and bold voices, is that something that you had to work for, or did that come pretty easy for you?
I didn't have any vocal coaching, actually, until later, before my second record. Our second record is I'm Drivin'. It was done in 2011. Probably 5 years before that, I started getting some vocal coaching with Mark Baxter in Boston, who taught me just some good techniques, sort of backed me up and helped me to learn how to get out of some bad habits and just improve the instrumentation of my vocals, and if you will. And from there, I was able really to grow my voice without damaging it, as you sometimes can when you don't have good technique.
Sure. So we're going to go ahead and hear another track off your CD, and the one we're going to listen to is entitled Blues for Honey Boy. Now, this is one of the originals that you did on the tune, and I wanted to ask you, was it hard to try to, or I should say, were you certain for a certain emulation of a sound, or is this something that you said your husband, is that right? Marty Richards, you guys wrote this together, right?
We wrote this together, and this is directly inspired by two things. One, our trip to Mississippi, in which we spent 10 days exploring all of the towns in Mississippi and really traveling the blues trail. But then in 2010, I was involved with a museum up here in Rhode Island, and without getting into it, about 10, 15 years ago, I was in radio for a short time, and I was producing a blues show, and I met Michael Frank, who was Honey Boy Edwards' manager. And fast forward to 2010, Michael contacted me and said Honey Boy was doing some shows in the area. Did I know where there might be an opportunity for a house concert? I said yes, at this museum. And so to help, facilitate their journey, we offered them to stay overnight at our house. So we had Honey Boy here at our house. He was 96 years old.
Wow.
And he spent the night, and the next morning I made him breakfast, and we sat together at the kitchen table for about an hour and a half. And he, even at that age, was just so clear in his memory of his childhood, the past, his time in Chicago, and this song, the lyric of it comes right out of stories that he told me, and the hook of it is really came from his sister. I asked him how he got the name Honey Boy, and he said when I was a baby, he had older sisters, and he was learning how to walk. He would walk and kind of fall over, walk and fall over, and his sister said, oh, look at that little honey boy. And that's how he got the name Honey Boy. So that's where the lyric in the song, oh, look at that little honey boy, comes from. It's him telling me about his sister.
How cool. Well, what a special treat for you to sit down with someone like that and be able to share stories and, hear some of the past. And that's very cool.
It was a gift, really.
Yeah. So this is Blues for Honey Boy from Ursula George off their latest release entitled One Steady Roll here on Open Mic on 89.9 FM, KGPR, Great Falls.
With his guitar in his hand, out ashore he rides the Peavine. At the crossroads met the man. Now look at that little honey boy, just as sweet as he can be. Oh honey boy, you flash that smile at me. Charlie, get canned, he'd make some fun. His birthday, say now, honey boy, don't put that hell up on my hun. Now look at that little honey boy, just as sweet as he can be. Oh honey boy, you cast your spell on me. Now he'd tell of meeting Robert off of Johnson and Maine, but the devil called it Three Fork. He left this world in vain. He hopped on up Chicago, getting Jim Crow off his back. He said goodbye to Jimmy, he ain't never coming back. Oh, no, no. With his guitar in his hand, out ashore he rides the Peavine. At the crossroads met the man. Now look at that little honey boy, just as sweet as he can be. Oh honey boy, you left your love on me. Goodbye to me.
And we're back. Lori, I wanted to ask you what's your plans for the future. Are you guys on the road right now? Or are you got some upcoming shows? Or are you sticking around the Rhode Island area?
Yeah, we're sticking around here. We have some shows in the regional area. We have something. Actually, I'm sort of on break until March, and then I'll start up doing some shows again because I was traveling, as I told you, and involved in other things. So we're thinking about when we'll do another record. That's on our mind. And of course, my husband is a professional, always on the go musician, and he does a lot of recording and performing with a number of different bands. So it's hard for me to book him, believe it or not.
Right. Yeah, right. That's funny. So when you guys go on the road and take a tour, how many people typically do you book the venues for? Like how many people are in your band, I should say, when you go out?
Oh, well, ideally I do the shows with 7 people, which allows me to have a clarinet, which is very important for this music, a trumpet, and saxophone. Sometimes if I don't have trumpet, I'll use a trombone. So, the horn section is very important, particularly the woodwind sound. And Tim Ray has been playing, plays on this the record with us. He's been doing shows with us. Usually on the road, David Zinno is our bass player. He did a few songs on this, but we also occasionally have Marty Ballou, and Mudcat Ward from Sugar Ray and the Blue Tones also did some of the songs on the record with us. In fact, he did the last 2 that you played. And, we have access to some great musicians who are also friends. So Doug James, who's been with Jimmy Vaughn's Tilt-A-Whirl band, just moved back here to Rhode Island. So Doug will be doing some shows with us, which is great. But the clarinet player and the trumpet player who did the record with us are Rich Latai and Doug Wolverton, who are also with Room Full of Blues. So it sometimes can be challenging to work around that schedule, but we do our best to try to work it out so we can have Doug and Rich as well.
Yeah. Well, I've always said that there's only one thing better than playing good music, and that is playing good music with some of your best friends. What a blessing to have them on stage, and it makes it so much funner,
Yeah.
Well, fabulous, Laura. Before we head out, we are going to listen to one more track, but I wanted to give you a chance to let our listeners know where they can reach you, somewhere on the internet or a phone number or anything like that, where we can take a look at some of your upcoming shows.
Sure. The best thing to do is to go on our Facebook page, and that's Ursula George. And if you want to email me, you're more than welcome to email me at ursulageorgemusic@gmail.com. I love to hear from everyone. And we've had just a great reception with this record. It's being played all over the world, really, and usually I post, for example, your show and different things we're doing where you can hear sort of specialty programs. So those are the best ways.
Fabulous. Well, Lori, thank you so much for taking your time to be with us today. Really appreciate it. Thanks again for sending the CD our way. Great songs on there. And we're going to go out with one last tune. This one's entitled Double Crossin' Papa. And Lori, just a couple words on this song?
This is written by Perry Bradford, who really is one of the original composers of vaudeville music and the father of race records. He wrote Crazy Blues, which was the first successful race recording in the country. And this song he wrote for Edith Wilson, and I really encourage everyone to learn about Edith Wilson, an amazing American woman with a long career who was a credit to her race, and this is one of their many recordings together, one of their many sides. So a wonderful tune, and Mudcat Ward plays bass on this, so check out the low end on it.
Fabulous. Well, once again, this is Double Crossin' Papa from Ursula George off their latest CD entitled One Steady Roll. And Miss Urso, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here on Open Mic today.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
Good luck in the future. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I've been having trouble here of late, 'cause my daddy done me wrong, and now I'm gonna show him the gate and say be gone. Well, just wait till he comes home today, and these words to him I will say: double-crossing Papa, don't double-cross me. That's my middle name, can't you see? You stayed out all night, said you was fishing, came home this morning, you found me missing. If you drink whiskey, I'll drink gin, flirt with other girls and I'll flirt with other men, 'cause you said you was fishing when you stayed out late. And if fish will bite if you got good bait. So I'm going fishing tonight, you'll see. Double cross and Papa, don't double cross me. You said you was fiddling when you stayed out all night. I didn't come home till broad daylight. We were spreading joy till 8:30. So you see, Papa, I'm never late. Yes, old Joe was fiddling till 4:30. He fiddled so hard, nearly broke his bow. And I